right. Morning, everyone. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram. You ever wake up some mornings and your head's a little foggy and you got stress coming at you from different directions, and no big deal, right? You can get to work. But I will tell you, hey, Hitch YYC, thank you for joining on Instagram. I will tell you that if you do a live stream every morning, that really highlights that sort of problem. Let's see how we do today. I think we are good to go. Let's get rid of that banner. Let's pause that music. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Mornings with Scott, episode 264 on August 22, 2024. I hope everybody's doing well. This is the best damn show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Thank you for joining. Big railroad strike in Canada. Actually, not a strike, a lockout of the two major railroads. I think 75-80% of that rail traffic crosses into the U.S. It will affect supply chains everywhere. Newspapers and X and everybody online is freaking out over the hit to the economy. My prediction, this is a big nothing. Nobody's supply chain is so dependent on an immediate rail transfer. My goodness, we went through this in COVID when we were some manufacturing businesses that I owned, and we're reliant on rail freight for our supply chain. We've been through this. Every company's been through this in North America. This is not going to be a big deal. It is blown out of proportion because there is no news in August worth talking about. So that's why this is such a big deal. Have you been following along on the live coaching sessions? So on the YouTube channel, the Winning Momentum Podcast, you can look that up on YouTube. You can subscribe. On there, there have been two coaching sessions during the slow summer months. I have been offering free coaching sessions to entrepreneurs, small business managers and owners, any size. I don't care what size of business you are. And my deal, for a limited number of people, my deal was I want to record that session. So you get a free half hour. I've been recording the session, and I can use that content for my channels. And so far, I don't think we've chopped it up into shorts or anything else, but we have put them on fully on that YouTube channel. So you can see coaching, and, we started off reviewing this entrepreneur's business plan, making amendments to that. We built a cash flow model, and I shared on the screen the Excel spreadsheet for a 13-week model, extended out way beyond 13 weeks to really prove the case, and changing his plan into a confidential information memorandum rather than a internal business plan or a PowerPoint deck, because you need to communicate a narrative. I don't want to go through all that detail with you because it's all on the YouTube channel, and you can go watch it and learn for yourself and follow along on that journey. Well, we did another coaching session, number 3, with that same entrepreneur yesterday, and today I will get that content up on YouTube. And what you will learn or be able to follow along is in the second coaching session, we talked about the confidential information memorandum, the structure that I wanted him to write his plan in, amendments to his cash flow model. He had done all that. He did a terrific job. And this was sort of a touch base and asking for comments and more guidance as to his direction. And then, so we talked about CIMs, we talked about the cash flow models again, and also we talked about distribution, because if you need to raise money and you're writing these plans, the last thing you want to do is work for months and months, get this plan exactly right. Now I can go off and sell it. I don't have anybody to sell it to. You need to concurrently at some point be building up your database for distribution of this document. And what you will see during this coaching session is a profound shifting in his thinking on his capital needs and capital structure. It's pretty cool. And I didn't know this for a fact when we started, but I had a gut feel when I first met this guy that he did not need what he thought he needed. And so we went through this process. And so that is pretty cool to see. The other thing that was cool to see is he sent me his draft CIM. So it's like a 12-page Word document sent to me in advance for review and comment. And so I said, well, I'll do that, but we need to do it live on this session, not live, but recorded on this session, which we did. And so I flipped through it, and I can't spend that much time on it. I'm not going to edit it. But what I did do is I used the attachment feature on Chat GPT, and I said, hey, this is in effect, a pitch deck, a confidential information memorandum intended to raise money, etc. If I just attach this Chat GPT, can you read the whole thing and give comments on it? And it said, sure. And I did. And it spit out comments in about 10 seconds. And I'm telling you, they were fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. As an example, the Chat GPT said in the opportunity section, here's a strength of that section. The opportunity section clearly outlines the benefits to investors, which is critical for the funding proposal. Suggestion, consider expanding on the exit strategy for investors. Provide more details on how and when they can expect returns, as well as the potential exit scenario, bracket, for example, acquisition, IPO, and bracket. Yes, that was exactly one of my points that I had written down in the financial section. Says this is the strength is it provides a detailed cash flow model, which is essential for demonstrating the business's financial viability. Yes, that's exactly why I had him put it in there. Suggestion, might be helpful to include a summary table or a financial snapshot, for example, projected revenue, profit margins, break-even points for quick reference. Investors appreciate easily digestible data points that summarize the financial outlook. Yes, excellent points. There was 10 of these points, and I could have got 100 of these points if I kept asking ChatGPT for this. If you're not writing your documents with the help of artificial intelligence, you are definitely missing out. I'm telling you, these points were dead on. They provided great feedback, and I just use this all the time now. I just use this all the time. You need to be using artificial intelligence for this sort of work. And as I said to this fellow, you'll see it on the coaching session, is not only for review of what you're written, but if you don't have the time, if you're not a great writer, if you're not a great communicator, I'm not suggesting that guy isn't. But what happens when you write these things is you work for a few weeks, gathering all the information, documenting, structuring it, laying it out. But then the next few weeks are all about editing, refining, because the last thing you want to do is send out a document with a typo in it, particularly if you're a professional services firm. If you're your own company, maybe it doesn't matter that much to have some mistakes. You'd rather not, but maybe it's not the end of the world. But if you're a professional firm, you can't do that. And so inevitably what ends up happening is it's 3 a.m. and you're going over this document for the 400th time. And you don't have to do that anymore. What you could do, and what I have to do in my documents now, is I just bullet point out. Like, here's what I'm trying to say in this section. Here's some inputs. And I do that in ChatGPT, and it writes the section for you. And then you can say, well, I didn't really mean that. I meant this. And it updates it immediately. And you say, what about this? What about that? And there's a starting point for you. Or I write the thing and I just cut and paste it into ChatGPT, and it words it better, differently. I think I'm a pretty good writer as long as I sit down and actually concentrate and focus. So I'm not sure that the artificial intelligence is a better writer than me. It's different, but oh my goodness, is it quick? And speed is often a big issue. So hey, Organic Chef Heather, thank you for joining on Instagram. So you're a business. You're writing proposals, you're writing documents, use artificial intelligence. By the way, I told this guy also, I do my term sheets now on this. If I'm doing a term sheet, I say, hey, GPT, I'm trying to, invest in this particular transaction. Here's the thing, here's the party, here's the date, here's the closing date. Here's how I think we want to structure it. It writes out a bullet point term sheet for me instantly and just saves me a day. Literally saves me a day. So that's cool. Check out the coaching session. It will be on Instagram. What else is going on today? Did you see do you remember I told you that all data is fake? all data is fake. I keep saying that on this show, particularly in an election year, which we are. You get election year in the US, probably an election in the near future in Canada. All data is fake. Well, US jobs report yesterday was revised down. Shocker. Shocker. Have you ever seen economic data in the Biden administration revised up? Now, I think that's just a coincidence, though, right? Is it just a coincidence that 100% of the time it's revised down? Well, revised down 818,000 jobs, a whopping number. I think that's the second largest negative revision in history in the United States. U.S. job market is much weaker than previous reported. Biggest downward revision in 15 years. Oh, since Biden. Since Obama. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Jobless claims are at the highest since the pandemic. On X, and EJ and Tony, a PhD and an economist, posts. Don't forget that today's massive downward benchmark revision, the second largest on record, is on top of the existing downward revision to the initial monthly job report figures. And between all of these revisions, the 12 months were widely overestimated by like 1.2 million jobs. He didn't say the like part in his post, thankfully. That's just my bad habits and grammar that is saying that data is fake. Don't rely on anything. Assume it's a lie. Go on with your business. And I'm telling you, we're in a recession, whether they tell you or not. This is a battle. Focus, focus, priorities, keep your costs under control. Make sure you have the liquidity that you need to hunker down through what is going to be continued and worsening economic times. That's what I see coming. And a large part of why I see that coming is I keep telling you that Kamala is going to be the next president, in my view. And with her policies, how bad that's going to be economically. I'm not trying to take a political position. I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm just trying to look at the facts available to me. But breaking news yesterday from ABC, JFK, John Kennedy Jr. will end his campaign, probably announced tomorrow on Friday, perhaps on Monday, and he's going to endorse Trump, which is a bit of a shocker. Well, maybe not. I mean, JFK was a Democrat. He was ousted. He wasn't allowed to debate and run in the primaries against Biden. They did all sorts of tricks on him to make sure that he couldn't compete. So he left and started an independent party because he's obviously not going to be Republican. And but now he is going to, according to ABC, going to endorse Trump. His VP pick, the very wealthy Silicon Valley type in Nicole Shanahan, who is of part Russian and part Chinese heritage, the Chinese being the important part for this story, posted on X yesterday that Trump has had 6 court battles to fight during this election. She's referring to all of the coordinated charges against him to hurt his campaign. So 6 court battles to fight during this election, while we, meaning RFK Jr. and her, have had 9 and counting across the country, because the Democrats have been just suing RFK everywhere they possibly can, JFK, everywhere they possibly can to, RFK. I wrote JFK in my notes just to confuse myself, but I should fix that so I don't have that problem going forward. Anyways, so she writes, we have had 9 and continuing across the country because the Democrats have been suing them to keep them off the ballots everywhere because, democracy. And so by bringing these suits against political opponents, the Democrats bankrupt the underpinnings of democracy. What the Democrats consider common course to win elections is the kind of, quote, normalcy, end quote, that leads to famine, sickness, and civil war. This country is ready for an administration that represents unity. Wow. Does that sound like somebody that's generally happy with the state of affairs and what's going on in her campaign and with the Democrats? So that might have been a little over dramatic. We'll see. But here's the point. The point is, I've been saying Kamala's going to win, and with her policies, the math is things are going to go bad for you and me. Well, maybe this changes that. I think this has a legit, if this actually happens, if ABC is correct, this has a legitimate chance of changing that. Conservatives are freaking out that Kennedy might be in caucus, but I don't know. Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if they turn Kennedy loose on the FDA, which is his pet project? His projects are environmental and food and the quality of food, which I think is probably the number one problem in the Western world. Wouldn't it be cool if they turned him loose on food manufacturers and made the whole Western world healthy? I think that would be interesting. Anyways, enough of that. Continuing on with our Naval series, Naval Ravikant, or Kant, is a entrepreneur, angel investor, thought leader, known for profound insights, investing, life philosophy, etc. Co-founded the Angel List. He's been an investor in hundreds of companies, including Twitter, Uber, and Yammer in the early days. He's a super rich guy. He does a thread on X at Naval, Naval, how to get rich without getting lucky. And we have been covering that thread, and I have been covering that last thread, and you've been listening to this in the last several episodes. Well, here's 3 more. Don't partner with cynics and pessimists. Don't partner with cynics and pessimists if you want to get rich without getting lucky. Their beliefs are self-fulfilling. Well, yeah, they are. And not only that, you should also remember that you are who you hang out with. There is a saying that if you take the top 5 people that you spend the most time with, that's who you are. You are the average of that. Don't hang out with cynics and pessimists. Avoid negativity at all costs. I was laughing as I was preparing for this because the older I get, the less tolerance I have for anything negative at all. I find myself needing to be hyper-focused on positives and the direction that I want to go, and I'm not interested in cynicism and pessimism. Second point for the day, learn to sell, learn to build. If you can do both, you'll be unstoppable. Learn to sell, learn to build. If you can do both, you will be unstoppable. I love this. I love this. Selling and building are really 2 different things. And back a few years ago, hey, Catherine, thank you for joining us. Catherine says, amen, yes, so we can hang out again, LOL. All right. Maybe I shouldn't have read that out loud. Where was I? Now I'm thrown off, Catherine. Selling and building are 2 different things. When I started content a few years ago, one of the things that was bothering the most on my Instagram feed or what have you with these coaching gurus, people giving business advice, is 100% of it was focused on putting out content, building sales, building branding. That's what it was about. But the fact of the matter is, only 2% of businesses create intergenerational wealth. In other words, you start a business today, statistically, you have a 2% chance of failing, of not in the sense that you can't sell the business later and create some wealth for yourself. Maybe that's why you didn't, maybe that's not the reason you started the business. Maybe that's okay. But if your idea was to create wealth, then it's 2%. In fact, 90% of those businesses never, ever pay a living wage to their founder. Maybe you didn't start that business to get intergenerational wealth, but you sure as hell expected to get a paycheck out of it at some point. And so the failing for that is not top line. It's not sales. It's not marketing. It is failing to know how to build a business. These are 2 different things. And so I love this. Learn to sell, learn to build. If you can do both, you are unstoppable. Third point, arm yourself with specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. Specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. Specific knowledge refers to the idea of just having unique and acquired experience, making you irreplaceable in your field. Let's put it that way. So you create this is the knowledge part of the accountability and leverage. I think the accountability and leverage speak for itself. But I just want to comment on the knowledge part. The idea here is to make yourself irreplaceable. Now, how do you do that? Do you become the very best person in the world at the one thing that you want to be at? I mean, how many people? Billions and billions of people in the world? Is it 6? Is it 8? I don't remember. But there's a lot of people in the world. What are the chances that you are going to become the very best person at that one thing? Instead, what you can focus on is the Scott Adams idea of a talent stack. So a talent stack, the concept behind this is that you can be 80% or the top decile in the world, 80, 90%, the best at almost anything that you put some time to. You can be great at it. You can't be the best. That's statistically really hard, but you can be right up there. And then if you start combining, I'm in the top 10% of this skill, top 10% of that skill, top 10% of that skill, and you put them together and there's some synergy between them, all of a sudden you become unique. So let's look at me. I've spent 30 odd years. I've been saying that number for a while, by the way. I've spent 30 odd years in financing. Okay. And I'm very good at private company financing. Am I the best in the world? I don't know. Probably not. Let's just say statistically, I'm not, but I'm pretty good at it. I'm certainly in that top 10%. Also, I specialize often in doing that in businesses that are difficult to finance, that are troubled. That makes me a little more unique because I've combined troubled company focus with financing. I also focus on mid-market and smaller businesses, not large pubco businesses like some of the other investment banks. So again, I'm narrowing my focus. I have an understanding, a different skill set on that size of business. I've been balance sheet focused, of course, because that's the job of finance and restructuring and all that sort of stuff. But I'm also operationally focused. I've personally stepped in and do all the time, and still to this day as interim CEO or president or CFO, and work to help change operations in this business. So now I'm not only doing what would be the typical corporate finance investment banking side for these mid-market and smaller businesses, but I'm combining that with operations, which brings me a very unique and limit a perspective on things and limits my competition. I've bought businesses, exactly this type of businesses. I understand the emotional and personal pressures that come along with this. I'm a professional accountant. I'm a professional business valuator. I've been trained in these things. I'm decent at marketing and I'm decent at selling. And so if you take all of these skills that I've accumulated over the career plus more, all of a sudden I become I do this content. I'm not afraid to be in front of a camera and to talk and to think, right? And so all of a sudden you put all those skills together and I have, I think, a unique talent stack that very few other, if anybody, has. And so that is a way to be 90% good at a number of different things. And when you put them together, you become the best. All right, we're short on time and I want to move on to mono thinking here. Globe and Mail essay yesterday. Globe and Mail, as I've told you all, is the Wall Street Journal of the North of Canada. And the article, actually, it's a submission. It's an essay. And it says, with tariffs on Chinese EVs, Canada will become the new East Germany. With tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, Canada will become the new East Germany. Written by Roger Boyd, who is a fellow at the Basile School of International Affairs. That's probably the Waterloo University. Basile was the guy who was one of the founders of Research in Motion, which was the creator of the original Blackberries. Do you guys remember Blackberries from the 90s? They were pretty fun. So, Basile School of International Affairs. And this Boyd guy specializes in research on the interactions between climate change and geopolitics. A fellow on the interactions between climate change and geopolitics. So, do I even need to read you the rest of the essay? Do we even need to talk about this? I mean, this is just going to be fluff, right? It's going to be singularly focused on one thing, univariable thinking, mono thinking, and it's going to lead to a bad conclusion. We already know that, right? Do we have to go through this? The monovision mindset. I can't think of this essay. I can't think of a more stupid, biased, blatantly Chinese sponsored propaganda. And there it is, right in our beloved Globe and Mail report on business. I can't believe that they let this through. Anyway, so Mr. Boyd here says that before the Berlin Wall came down, many East Germans were proud of their Trabant, Trabant cars. But as soon as the walls came down, they got to see everybody else's Mercedes and BMWs, and they went, holy shit, our cars suck. Those cars are great over there. I guess we shouldn't have had this wall between us because they have better stuff. That's basically what he says. He says the United States is now doing the exact same thing. They've constructed their own EV version of the Berlin Wall, 100% tariff against the leader in EV development, which is China. And so he's comparing the very idea that you can have tariffs in the U.S. against China and on a particular product, in this case, electric vehicles, and that would be similar to having the wall between East and West Berlin. China has a long history. China has a long history of providing. I think it started in the 1990s. China just sort of identified industries. All right. Think back, if you're old enough, to the automotive sector, tool and die in the 1990s. And China said, hey, we want to take that over and we want to get all those jobs and that expertise over here. And so they provided free capital to that industry, which is a capital intensive industry. And that was a move by the Chinese government. They didn't care about much else. We're going after stamping. And so you got a zero cost of capital, or close enough. You had really cheap labor back then in China. So you had all of these advantages, and you took over the whole industry. And it wiped out Windsor, Ontario. It wiped out Detroit. When is the last time you got your tooling done in North America? Do you remember doing that? I don't think that's happened for a long, long time. And when you wipe out the industry, what happens is you after a generation, wipe out the expertise. I don't know that any Canadians or Americans know how to make a tool anymore or to work on these sort of things. Obviously, there's some exaggeration in there, but that has long been the strategy of the Chinese, and good for them. Good for them that they are able to do that. So, along with that, all the jobs are gone. I love my BlackBerry too, Catherine. I still miss that. So Canada has been under pressure to do the same, says this twit. What's his name again? Roger Boyd. Under pressure to do the same. Ottawa has launched consultations on the matter, and the decision could come any day now. It would be a mistake if Canada follows the United States imposing punitive tariffs. Would it be a mistake? The very idea that you could take a materially different economic decision than the U.S. in Canada. I mean, make that Canada could take a different decision than the U.S. of such a significant nature in the automotive sector is insane. It's absolutely insane. We have the only reason we have an automotive sector at all in Canada is because we are integrated with the U.S. We don't have enough market. It is markets that drive things. The U.S. has the market. The U.S. is, in other words, a bunch of people that like to buy cars. And when they combine the U.S. with Canada, they have a larger market, maybe a 10% larger market, somewhere along that lines. But we in Canada do not have a large enough market to justify having our own auto industry in isolation. And so we are integrated, and what a huge benefit that has been to Canada labor, manufacturing, all the spin-offs. It's been a huge benefit to us. And clearly, This Boyd guy doesn't understand that because he's focused on getting EVs into Canada as cheap as possible because he's a climate change guy, right? And by the way, I'm not picking on the climate change, and I'm not picking on EVs as being great solutions. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't want to take a position on that. I'm just saying when you think about one thing only in your business, in your life, when you're writing an article for the Globe and Mail, if you think about one objective and one objective only, you turn yourself into a fool because you ignore the other real issues that go along with that. To gain real traction for the adoption of EVs in Canada, we need more competition and lower prices, something the Chinese manufacturers can provide. Sure, they can, because they're wiping out the domestic industry. No individual company can compete with a state. That's not competition. That's completely unfair. By the way, can the American and Canadian parts and EV manufacturers go to China and start producing stuff for their billions of people, whatever they have? No, you can't do that. I mean, Tesla has invested there. Good on them. But this is not free trade. This is not fair competition. This is General Motors competing against the entire Chinese population and government. It's ridiculous. Some argue that China has unfairly supported the EV industry. Then he goes on to say, but so do we, basically. What else have we got here? It's a Berlin Wall. Okay, whatever. None of that is important, and we're getting short on time. So that is the essence of this guy's essay, is that there should be no tariffs. We should get wiped. This industry should be wiped out by the Chinese EV in the name of competition, even though it's not fair competition. And the whole point of this is the idea, of course, that we can get cheaper electric vehicles. So, when you're building, when you're focusing on a single goal and not on a system, when you have a mono vision mindset or a mono mindset, and you're thinking about one thing, you're not thinking well. You're not thinking well. And we do this all the time. We do this all the time in our business. We do it all the time in our life. And you see it in politics, but more on the left, because I think the left are very goal oriented in my observation, and the right are very process oriented in my observation. Just beware of that. Beware of that as you are going forward. And and the other problem with this guy's article, by the way, is that it appears no one wants EVs anyways. Obviously, there's some market for it, but the Wall Street Journal reported that Ford shrinks its EV rollout plans as demand lags, and it's canceling plans for a large electric sports utility vehicle, and will take 1.9 billion in write-offs as a result of that. This is it. The Dearborn, Michigan automaker says it's scrapping its 3-row SUV, and that's just the latest example throughout the industry of the large manufacturers just getting away from their EV mandate. Why? Because the demand is not there. The government has pushed for the demand with subsidies, but it's not there. And also, low-cost Chinese imports. Ford's writing off $1.9 billion because Ford can't compete with the Chinese government, Mr. Boyd. General Motors last month pushed back the timeline on electric pickups, which is going to hurt labor in Detroit. So did Ford on an electric pickup. They pushed it out 1 year till 2027. And Ford announced it's going to trim its capital spending on fully electric vehicles to about 30% of its budget. It had originally targeted 40% of its budget. So there you go. Ford has said its EV business is on pace to lose about $5 billion this year. How long do you think Ford ought to be losing $5 billion? If Ford goes away losing $5 billion a year, what is that going to do to labor across North America? Do you think that's going to be a good thing? Or are we just going to end up with more hollowed out Midwestern cities full of fentanyl while the manufacturing and the wealth is created in China? Which do you think that's going to be, Mr. Boyd? All right. Those are my prepared remarks. I ran a little over today. Thanks for participating, Catherine, and giving some comments. Anything else on Instagram I should look at? Nope, I think we are good. End of the week tomorrow. We will see you 8:30 Mountains, and check out for that coaching session on the YouTube channel today. I think it's pretty cool. Thank you for listening.